Lionel, welcome to the Tony Tan Show and podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I heard that you're quite the minstrel for virtual reality and augmented reality.
No. Thanks for the flattery and compliments, Tony.
Yeah, I was just reading your bio the other day, and I know that you are the founder and CEO of Immersively, and you have been doing a lot of projects for Singapore government. You also did a project for London for first 360 Dance. You were involved with a project from Singapore Tourism Board and Singapore Arts Council, right?
A couple of projects like that, yeah, correct.
Wow,
right.
I think that's exciting.
I mean, first of all, I don't call myself a CEO or MD because I think while I was formally trained in the tech side of things, I never actually took like a formal entrepreneurship course or, like a startup course. So the whole founder of a startup was actually conceptualized and took off because there was business that was coming in. Then I had to scramble to learn how to put business together, business entity, incorporate, and then Immersively was formed as a private limited. And at that time, I was like, what does a CEO do? What does an MD do? So with no clear rules, about what to do in that space, I just named myself creative technologist because that is what I was formally trained in. I took a postgrad for it. And basically navigate my way in the 4 years, 11 months of startup life to just respond to clients and deliver the best applications that we could develop.
Yeah, but you know what? That's the life of an entrepreneur. Most of them do not know what they get into, and then along the way they fumble, they stumble, and then they become more successful, just like yourself, right?
Some say you also have to be part marketer, part HR, part admin, and everything else for a startup, right?
Yes. You have a bit of everything in you.
Yeah, you have to do everything, right? Yeah,
and then you end up being a consultant to Forbes Asia as their VR consultant, right?
It was an interesting story. In 2017, while giving a lot of these talks and getting invited to conferences, I got pinged by one of the editors to meet for tea. And then they said that they needed some editorial and a voice to talk about the tech scene in this particular area for Asia. At the time, I was like, sure, whatever I can manage. And lo and behold, she turned out to be from Forbes. And I thought, wow, this is a good opportunity. So that opportunity actually came with a lot of sub-opportunities or further opportunities. People know of us. People want to be written, or for me to write about them. But then when they tell us about what they're doing, I came to understand what is the regional and international landscape. So a lot of these opportunities propel me not just, in the current local landscape. At a time and even now, because I've been keeping in touch, I'll be able to tell you like who's doing something involving neuro VR, something that's got brainwave involved, who's doing something that's got gloves involved, because it didn't take me to actually research about them. The opportunity came where they reached out to me and wanted me to include their startups, their business, their tech into Forbes. And that was a very good uplift of awareness about who's doing what and where.
You are the man exactly for today's show.
No.
Right, because I think you have insights to so many of these use cases that all our audience are dying to hear. Right, and I read somewhere from Business Wire that says that virtual reality as well as augmented reality will grow by $125 billion from 2020 to 2025. That's huge, right? And there's this big wave of virtual reality, augmented reality adoption that's coming up in the world.
Yep.
I think next to AI, this is one of those fastest growing technology that we are looking today.
Yep.
So I just want to understand, Lionel, from your front seat in this technology, why is VR today, taking off, and what are the use cases for VR, especially in Singapore?
Okay, well, that's a good question. I think when people understand like what AI can do is what computers do that helps you to make things or make life easier. So in the same fashion, immersive technology, or XR we call it, right, as a family name of all the different R's in this technology space, has become increasingly more and more known to people because of the fact that it's not only a visual medium, they can see how the technology is being used, but it's also very easy to adopt because a lot of the current industries actually can harness it. So it's not niche in a certain sense of some of these technologies which only relegated to, for example, PCs or laptops. But in another sense, if you look at the different R's, AR is where you augment something using existing devices like phones and tablets. Your living room is empty, I use a tablet and you can see multiple furniture there. You can change them because they're digital and even tweak the color so that you can directly order it. And if you put your tablet down, you have an empty room again. But the order is already on the way. So AR by now would have gained a lot more traction than pre-COVID because of because of the technology's easy understanding of it. And also for the fact that a lot of governments, a lot of companies already understood how it's being used. And of course, plus the fact that it's given a boost with Pokemon Go and seeing Pikachu in AR space. So the idea of this has really propelled AR to a lot of different fronts. So I think with AR, we can see more and more people holding up phones and deploying it in certain cases that will continue to spread. But particularly in retail, I think that's an interesting proposition. Imagine now that I have to show you 10 paintings, 10 sculptures, 10 artifacts, or even 10 homes. I could augment them right in front of you and even allow you to interact with them. You can use your fingers to pinch and turn, zoom in, zoom out, or even in a case where you augment a room to see the interior design, you can literally walk using your feet into the augmented room because you're holding a tablet out like a visor and seeing the interior design and appreciating it. And the physicality of your bodily involvement into it compared to like reading it off a magazine, watching it a video, I think that in itself is an experience that cannot be shortchanged. And once people say, the good old saying, once you go there, you never go back, right?
Right.
So they come to understand that, wow, this is the way to experience it. And then sales can get on board, marketing can get on board, companies will get on board, and then that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there is a lot more of these things that will slowly come to light when more and more people get to experience it.
Right.
I think VR, on the other hand, is where you use a wearable, like a headset, and you put it on yourself. So if everybody has a headset right now, I will tell you the adoption will be 100 times, a million times over. But of course, VR, like when iPhone first rolled out, there needs to go through their own mature cycle of how it's going to be adopted, right? We are going through a very accelerated process of the iPhone 3 to the iPhone 4 to the iPhone 5. And if you recall during that time, most people still resisted because they liked the old Nokia with the keypad.
Right.
And it took a certain while before they realized that actually the touch screen is everything. Headsets are like that. What is working against VR right now is that at the time, iPhone was the only company that rolled out, touchscreen mobile phones. But by the time iPhone 4 and 5 came out, a lot of other brands were already in the picture, as you know, right? And you have your heavyweights like your Samsung and so on.
Right.
But in the VR world right now, the pioneer and the leader is only one, Facebook Oculus,
Right.
who are well capable to invest and to make the headsets low price so that people will be able to be incentivized to buy it. But they don't have a competing, well-resourced competitor to bring this whole hardware to the masses. So this current stoppage, even though Apple and other companies like HTC Vive, and even though they're on board, they don't have the commitment, I guess, and even the dedication of Zuckerberg, for example, to go and invest in their own resources to make it in such a way that I look at numbers of adoption first before I look at revenue. So I think that is the current, for lack of a better word, comparison compared to the iPhone and the mobile phone era on why we don't see headsets in everybody's home right now. But if you look at the stats again, it has increased manifold over COVID. Propelled by the fact that people are home, so they look for different devices. The kids like the Nintendo Switch, but the adults don't. So what do, right? So when they start reading, seeing videos of the Oculus and the VR headset, then you know that they're going to get it. So even for last Christmas, for example, for full 5 to 6 weeks, the VR headsets were sold out everywhere. In fact, as part of one of those VR Facebook groups, it's very funny to see users post up photos and go, hey, there's one unit left here, grab it or you can,
Right.
And it was like unheard of because suddenly it became a hot commodity that people just had to get it to try it out. And next thing you know, they're just exploring, which to the industry is a very good thing. Because in 2018, I had a professor who was teaching at RMIT. He called and said, hey, I tried out this VR game in the malls. And then when I went home, I put two and two together. I was wondering, instead of a game, can I put a headset on and pretend I'm in a lab? And I'm using my hands via the controllers to mix chemicals together without fear that it will explode. I said, of course. That's the whole idea. So the good side of things is, although gaming is the first genre, to reach people, it won't take very long before they start to do the math and add up things and see, hey, there's actually many, many use cases of it. And last but not least, of course, is this thing called the mixed reality. So mixed reality is a little bit like AR, where you can augment things in your physical space. You can put in furniture there and all that, but it's a wearable. It's not handheld like a mobile or tablet. It's wearable because it is, one thing is you wear it and it allows you to gesture. Your hands will go in front of the headset. It detects your fingers and you can move a digital object there and there. But because of this allowance of gestures and interaction, the headset needs to have a lot of different sensors, unlike the phone. And if it's a wearable, many sensors, it means that the headset is expensive.
All right.
So it is the one tech that hasn't actually matured in my own interpretation, because of the amount of hardware and software that needs to go in there. And because of that, the price is also very high. It's almost easily about 7-8 times of a VR headset.
I see.
So because of the cost, it will remain B2B for now, right? And even in the B2B space, it's not affordable per se. But I think in all the three different R's, people are starting to understand the needs and the use case in between them.
Yes.
And particularly in VR, where, we can talk about it further, where you are in a living room, you are in the office, and you put it on, you cannot see your colleagues, but you don't need to, because you're teleported into the inside of an engine, in the operating theater. So these kinds of immersion that allows you to stand, walk, grab, hold, touch, right? Possibly everything other than smell is really getting people to understand the use case of it.
I see. That's really interesting to give us a breakdown on the three technologies that we are talking about that's growing so fast in today's markets, right? Let me take it a little bit back to VR, right? Some people say that one of the obstacles to a wider adoption is because the headsets are still rather big and it's connected to hardware, and also the graphics, although the graphics are improving, but it's not nowhere near those type of graphics that we see in the Sony PlayStation 5, for example. So what are your thoughts about it? Do you think that if the headsets get smaller and then the graphic resolution gets higher, we talk about price, of course, the lower the price, the higher the adoption. But with smaller headsets and higher graphics, do you think this will really be a factor of taking off for this technology?
I think that's how do I put it? It's a human tendency thing, right? I mean, if you ask a layman again, would you have a mobile phone that is the size of a 50-cent coin? Would you still be able to use it? The first question is how, right? But then in the same token, we also see mobile phone manufacturers coming up with bigger mobile sets.
Right.
Now got 2 screen for $2,000, and the take-up is very hot.
Yes.
So, I mean, what I'm throwing out here is basically akin to the fact that we haven't gone to an era, and I don't think I will in my lifetime, where we squeeze all the hardware and software until the point where it becomes invisible. And even if it does, I don't even know whether it's a good thing, because I don't know how to manage a 50-cent coin as a communication device.
Right.
Unless it's hotwired into your veins or your brain.
Or your eyes.
Which is another discussion altogether, right? Which is not a good thing, as we know, right? We'd rather keep it separate and external from us.
Yeah.
So in that same mindset and the same discussion, how much technology can improve until the VR headset can become glasses, for example, right? Surely it can get there, but the question is when. And I think right now they're really missing, what's the saying? Trees for the forest, or forest for the trees, right? We are born and having to experience this time where VR has started, the evolution of where technology is incepted. I think that is far more exciting to be in a time to live rather than to see the technology mature. And then it becomes so small that you have not even understood or saw when it first started.
Right.
So I think that is we look at TV today, and then how many of us can say, wow, I remember when it was still a big box with the black and white, and having that kind of experience with it to see a progression, I think that would be a lot more exciting. Surely people are getting, of course, more impatient now because they're so used to the rollout, adoption and manufacturing of mobile phones now, because before you can ask for anything better, it's really given to you. So I think in some way or another, we are really spoiled for the fact that
Yes.
we also want to see every other tech smaller, cheaper, better, right? But unless miracles happen, then these things will take time. And the taking time is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, right? As this technology starts, don't wait.
Oh, not only you enjoy it, but seize the opportunity. What can you do in this current time that you can play a part? Like for example, companies that are inventing controllers, the original headsets don't have, like for example, glove controllers, and then they got together, formed a startup, and then contributed that as their ecosystem. The default controller not good enough? Here, check out our startup that enables you to wear it as a glove.
Yes.
So the journey will always take its course, but how do we identify these gaps and come in so that we are able to play our part, right? And of course, the holy grail would be, it's so prevalent, it's so good that the parent company, the one and only Facebook or Oculus, will say, wow, that's good, I'm going to buy you, right? So then you have a proposition and opportunity there, is it?
Yeah. So just now when you're talking about these enhanced gloves or stuff like that, I think we are talking about haptic sensors, right?
Correct.
So can you share with the audience, what do you mean by haptic sensors? And what do you mean by wearable, and how does that augment the virtual reality experience?
Yes. So for example, because we know that VR headset, you wear something in your head.
Right.
And because you wear something in your head, your eyes and your ears are already been provided with the sensors. Each headset comes with spatial speakers as well. Right. So it works almost like headphones. And then you have these controllers. So you pick it up and you use the trigger like your hands. If you look carefully at the controllers, there's actually a front trigger for you to use your first finger. There's one on your second and third finger, and there's also for your thumb. So when you move these fingers in the virtual space, it looks like you're moving your hands. But that's it. So there's nothing for the feet. There's nothing for the rest of the body.
Right.
Now imagine if you are using the headset and you're playing a shooting game, right? So if you and I are wearing headsets and I, let's say, take a sword in my two hands, which I can see and feel because the controllers give out vibration. But I attempt to swing the sword at you, and if I do hit you on the shoulder, the headset cannot provide a vibration to tell you that you've been hit on the shoulder. So that part of the feedback is missing, right? Unless you're in some kind of a physical sport game where I physically hit you, you definitely feel it.
Right.
So there is an immediate need and gap there for some haptics to be registered. And of course, in the gaming world, this becomes very crucial. And that's why there are haptic suits right now that you wear on, that you can feel these vibrations. And some of these suits go all the way to your toes. So it's full body. But it also means you need to wear them before you use VR, and comes in with another set of inconvenience, and can it be smaller, can it be, and so on and so forth. But again, we are getting there, right? Then comes the use case. Why is there so many, is there so many use case of these haptic suits where, you have to wear on? Well, to be honest, if it was easily available, cheaper, I don't see why people will not use it, right? But it is, again, not cheap. It is it's a hassle to put it on and things like that. So the adoption is nowhere close to even VR headsets. But that being said, can you imagine the niche use case that it provides for many of the possibilities?
Right.
For somebody who's undergoing physiotherapy, somebody who's unable to step out of the room he's been in for the last 6 months, to put on a headset and see that you're in a garden, right? To look down in the ground and sort of virtually step on a stone and to feel that in the haptic suit. I think these are the things that are really taking place in terms of these niche industries.
Right.
And it's when these niche industries would then gain traction, it will serve those that are sorely missing some of these things that wouldn't have been done if VR wasn't there.
Yep.
And then from then on, we hope that it will then flood and flow on to the other industries.
Yes.
But I think if we're able to even ascertain that these things are so good in these particular industries, I can imagine the patient's smile on the face, when they try it on, compared to the 6 months they have been trying to do physio in a fixed, closed room, and the difference that makes. So some of these things really brings delight to the tech, and that's why I'm always excited to talk about it.
Yeah, and we can see some of these techs already being used in the movie Ready Player One, right? Haptic suits. and the possibilities of it mixing with virtual reality, it's a whole new digital world altogether.
Yeah. Although in the movie there's a slight suspension of imagination.
Of course.
You're not wearing a suit, but you still feel feedback.
It is still a movie after all, right?
Yeah. But the whole idea of the movie also gave rise to the fact that it is possible to lead a double life, and in a good way. There's the physical life, and then there's the virtual life. And the virtual life is still akin to your second life, like we all know about, right? But in the old days of the second life, you interact via your desktop mouse or mobile phone. But imagine now second life is whereby I can reach across you, use my controller and pat you on the shoulder. Right? I can totally use the controller and artificially draw something and virtually hand it to you. The whole interaction would then change second life or uplift second life to the fact that now the interaction is no longer touch screen or mouse. It's a physicality, right? I can walk around you in VR and you can see me. So I think this is really why, and by no means my own interpretation, because even Zuckerberg has announced this. This is why Facebook has made a very focused attempt to not only acquire Oculus, but that's why they want to push it forward, because social, in a many extent, can extend beyond just an app or a desktop. It will allow you to use gestures, bodily interaction, and virtual giftings, creating things that are in the virtual space to start to interact and give to people. And I think that's where the excitement is really only touching the tip of the iceberg for now.
Yeah, it's like a lot like the ecosystem that we see on online gaming, but now it's on steroids.
And the fact that online gaming has got an ecosystem, but also not quite, because everything is still via a screen.
Yes. You're
seated down, you're on a bed. You know, 90% of your body is still not interacting except fingers and brains, for example. Right. But imagine that whole experience where you're up on your feet, you're moving around. You know, you are exercising your creativity in drafting a painting virtually or describing it in such a way that you're using your hands and people in your room or in your space can see you. I mean, yeah, you know,
yes.
it is basically transversing boundaries in the virtual space no matter where you are. And all it takes is a VR headset and a Wi-Fi connection, right?
Yeah, so just now we mentioned a few very interesting use cases, right? We're talking about the gaming industry. We're talking about doing the impossible. You know, people who are locked in a room or for whatever conditions that they have, they do not able to experience the outside world, but we can now make it possible, right? So we are doing the impossible as a use case for virtual reality. But there's also a lot of use case around what is dangerous that can be replaced by virtual reality. Would you like to comment on that?
Sure. I think like all dangers is a question of really how far you push it and things that we don't foresee and then suddenly creep in, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things about virtual reality is and with all realities is there's more screen time, right? So even as we ourselves, when we first started, we started to introduce a lot of AR workshops, VR classes. We do get a lot of pushback, you know, from the parents that go, wow, more screen time for my kids. You know, so you can't escape that, right? Because technology does involve some kind of a display and a screen. So does it mean that we'll be glued to screens more in time to come? So that's a pitfall or a caution or challenge that we cannot ignore, even for advocates and practitioners. But that being said, I think the other thing that is more concerning is what happens within the virtual space. So for VR, for example, even as it is a positive thing, it's an encouragement for us all to be connected in the virtual space, to use gestures to, you know, congratulate you, shake your virtual hands, give you virtual gifts. But at the same time, that virtual self might not be me. I could be a girl and trying to deceive you. Right? The whole ethos and ethics of a virtual being will then draw from history what is it like to hide behind a hidden identity and to profess to be who you are and for what means and for what ends.
Right.
You can never interpret the ill intent of somebody who says openly that they are here to make friends but otherwise. So I think without that physical, I mean, it is even hard now to interpret that physically. You have people that will backstab you physically already. What more virtually, right?
Right.
So when you're hidden behind a virtual persona, that I think becomes even more tricky to decipher and to interpret. And even in virtual chat rooms, sexual harassment by having this virtual avatar constantly jabbing at you and giving you, all kinds of different suggestive text or chat or whatever. Again, those fall within the old realms of ICQ or currently like messenger harassment and all that. So these things won't go away. It's now that it's increased based on the fact that it's not just a flat screen anymore. It's embodiment as well.
Yes.
So that becomes another point to navigate, you see.
Yeah.
But I think just like in the online space or in the app space or in the ICQ or in the chat room space, the community is still there. So if I'm in a chat room of 10 avatars and I see this one person always picking on this other person, then it really the community to respond. Because if the rest of them are legit, the rest of them are moral, they can see and then they can do something about it. So I think by and large, right, just like a lot of other community space, we depend on and we trust that the fact that the community is going to do something about it. The real question is whether they're fast or slow. As one of the victims, let's say, of the chat room, would this person already have suffered all the different, taunting and all that before the community detects that? And then what is it going to do for this person's mental well-being? That's something that we still cannot, attest to. But so in that sense, I think you cannot not ignore the pitfalls of any of these virtual space. But I think in light of these things that we cannot ignore as a whole, not just physically, you can get taunted and you can get cheated in the online space also, right? The sooner we face them, the sooner we become aware of them, the sooner we understand how to tackle them as a community as a whole, the better we are so that we can pass the message on to somebody else. And that's how I guess we can help stop, these things from happening.
Yeah.
So the next time a bully comes, even in a virtual space, everybody's radar will be like, hey, this guy got something fishy there, let's be wary of him. I think that is a good thing to rise up to and add a feather to our cap as one of the additional skills to learn.
So you're mentioning that cyberbullying and also sexual harassment, I mean, this is something that's very prevalent, but now it's digitized, right? And also the other thing that we were talking earlier about the headsets, the ability to engage the different senses, not like last time, it's just a screen. Right now you are talking about you are able to engage at least 3 or 4 of your senses. So the dopamine rush is going to be a lot more stronger, right?
Yeah.
Already we see that people are addicted to online gaming. Now can you imagine with the rise of VR, this could be amplified by X number of times. And we are reading about this very interesting topic recently about the migration of human consciousness. Okay, because today you and me, we're having a very physical, very human social interaction that's been happening for millions of years.
Yep.
Now with VR, the capability of VR, the thing is our consciousness will go into a digital world, right? And with addiction that's going on, this becomes a very dark thing, right? What's your take about this? Is there something we can do to, in your opinion, that we can manage this? I think we are already seeing a lot of psychologists talking about this, and one of the pitfalls.
So I think on that note, on that subject, the one thing that we are very aware of in terms of addiction and game addiction is because of the fact that these PC gaming, console gaming, and even mobile gaming are plugged into an endless supply of electricity that you cannot stop. Right, PC and consoles, you're plugged into the wall, and if you keep it running, you keep it running. Yep. The phones today can go 9 hours even, right? So with some of these devices, you have the capability to actually power your gaming to an unhealthy level, and especially for PC, like what we saw in Korea, Japan,
right?
They just keep going because the electricity is there, and unless somebody flips the switch,
right?
Yeah. Well, thankfully in VR, your headset only lasts 2 hours.
For now.
Continuous play for now, yeah. So at some point in time, it's going to go flat.
Right.
Right. And with VR, because you're wearing it, the more battery life, the heavier it becomes. So I think the trade-off is still going to be quite manageable. And gone are the days whereby they need to plug the headset into a laptop, because those were how the early VR headset started. And now that everybody's happy that it doesn't have any wires, I think the addiction to it is going to be undermined by the battery life of the headset. So that's still okay, I think, still manageable, I think. But in the same vein, they will find the addiction there of wanting to go back in because of the fact is it can be pretty addictive. So I think in that particular area whereby they need to then manage how to charge it or buy 2 headsets to just jumble between one another, then boils down to the sheer fact of human self-control and the people around you and how they're going to help you or not. And for every one case that has fallen into, the death traps of addiction, everybody else will be able to see how that is going to be unhealthy and advise you, hopefully. And I think we don't really have to look into this space to say that, wow, this is going to go down a really unhealthy route, because everything else in excess is also unhealthy, right? Unhealthy eating, unhealthy drinking, unhealthy everything. It's a question of whether you are aware of it and whether the community around you actually warns you about it. So to isolate tech just to the fact that it's got addiction in gaming, for example, and completely ignoring the other factors attributing to addiction is probably not fair in a sense. Yeah. But I think in the same token, for every addiction out there that is suffering under gaming and tech is also used to help with addiction. So there are a lot of these things, like even, in VR, simulating an operating theatre for people to operate in VR using a digital simulation. These things and many more in the medical addiction and simulation world that helps those that fallen to addiction. I think those things are the ones that probably supersedes the addiction cases.
Yeah. So would you say that first, to master tech, you must first master yourself? Wisdom of using tech is important, because that tech is an obstacle at the end of the day, right?
I think tech is a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool. What you use as a physical hammer to, is now a virtual hammer that you use to drive the nail home for something else.
Right.
So I think we, just like fire, we will never allow it to be our masters, right? We just make sure it's at bay because it is a slave to our needs.
Right.
But of course, if you combine AI into it, then it becomes a different discussion, a different topic, and all that, right? So that's why the people who profess about AI has now made a U-turn to say we need to keep them at bay.
Yeah.
But of course, that is something to discuss and manage about, because I think by the time AI self-learn itself, there's so many other factors that they need to learn before they take over the world, so to speak. So we just need to manage that. But I think where this particular XR industry is concerned, if we are very deliberate and we are very focused to make sure that the AI involved is only to what it's supposed to do, that I don't think we have a very immediate need to worry in that particular sense. Yeah.
So through my entire Tony Tan show and podcast, where we spoke to so many thought leaders, one of the recurring themes that we see from all these thought leaders is that we need to be mindful, very mindful and conscious on how you use tech, right? And also be conscious to have the wisdom to use tech in a wise manner, because it can go either way. As you rightly say, tech is a servant. Ultimately, we are the masters. So if we manage ourselves, then we are able to manage the tech well. If we don't manage ourselves, the tech can go dark anytime. Right? So it's a duality in that sense, right? Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, absolutely. I think not just duality, it's also a question of making sure that the fact that we can't ignore the fact that tech is coming, right? And in fact, some people say it's here, but I reserve the fact that it's always coming. It's coming in ways which you discover new things. And really, the question is how we seize the opportunity to use it and to help our economic businesses, our economic activities, better the three facets of life, right? Which is your work, your life, your play. And how these things will then help you in these areas, I mean, as we know, because of COVID now, we are accelerated by video conferencing. And then we know that suddenly video conferencing become the aha moment where you realize that you don't have to fly to do a productive meeting. Right. So I think, and video conferencing is not a cutting edge tech, So I think some of these tech, so to speak, is really a question of when and how, and the definitive moment for us to understand that, hey, this is something that we harness, then we can use it in our applications of various points of our lives.
I really enjoyed talking to you, looking at the dark side, the possibilities of tech, and a lot of these use cases you have shared. But one thing that a lot of our audience, right, they don't really understand, because we see that we talk a lot about virtual reality, but we also see market research that say augmented reality will outstrip virtual reality by a factor of X times, right? Why do you think AR will be the one that's growing much faster than VR? What is propelling these differences, for our audience?
I think as a top-line reply, I wouldn't put them as a competing factor. There's no prize to say XR must win AR or vice versa. And also in that same light, right, these are different sub-tech if I may call it, right?
Right.
There are different categories and families of tech, and each one of them has got different use case. And by the sheer fact that everyone has a phone or even more than one phone, already gives AR a head start because you
see.
can easily use it, whereas VR you still need a headset.
Right.
But AR will never allow you the same immersion of you putting a headset and reimagining this room as somewhere else.
Yeah.
They will never. And the kind of immersion, even for example, a medical patient, mental patient, to suspend their belief because they wear the headset and find themselves in the garden when they have been stuck in a room for a year. There's no replacement for VR in that sense. So I think they all serve different applications and different use case.
Right.
And I think in terms of where it matters most is how we better our lives through the use of them. Can our business take off because we deploy VR? Can we use AR because it helps at home with the furniture ordering and all that, right? Can we repair things better because of the use of MR? So I think it's really, and we know our life is segmented into so many different aspects.
Right.
I think it's really how we then leverage on about all the different R's to make sure that, the work, life and play domain is completely uplift from the use of these things.
Right.
That is by far, I think, the more important, prerogative, rather than which one is making better traction than the other.
I think that's a very good statement. I think that's a very fair statement to make. Right. I think at the end of the day, it's use case driven. Right.
Exactly, but also you cannot escape the fact that these statistics will come out from research companies, from advisories and all that. And I think they do their due diligence to do that, because if you talk about VC or PE or investor, it's also a bit far-fetched to ask them to invest into all three tech. So if you say, can you pick for me one tech, right, and give me the stats for me to invest, then that's how these trends will then come out.
Right.
And then they have to pick AR because these stats show that they are most widely adopted and they put all their money there. Because no one will be able to, well, not no one, maybe, but they will be hard-pressed to want to invest in all the tech. So they still have to, pick their choices based on statistics and reports and see, okay, this is probably the way to go.
Right. And I want to ask you another question, very important question through our shows, is that a lot of our audience are very concerned about digital innovation taking away jobs, whether it's AI, whether it's all the different techs that's coming up. Do you see VR and AR augmenting humanity or taking away jobs?
That's an easy answer. Because AI can work by itself without the human intervention, right? Purely based on the two pillars that we know about, which is deep learning and machine learning. Right. So in a nutshell, if you feed it a set of data, it will learn by itself and then improves it and keep learning. So once the human feeds the first set of data, if the programming is rock solid, it can continue on. It doesn't require a lot of intervention unless there's physicality involved, like battery and so on and so forth. But in the family of XR, everything that XR is supposed to do is to serve the user. You use the tablet and the user is supposed to choose which furniture, right? You wear the headset and the user is supposed to be trained. So I think in the family of all the different technologies out there, XR is probably the one that has got the least amount of intimidation to take over anything, right? And it sways, even pose any dangers for the end user.
It's less controversial, I would say that, because all the use cases is really augmentation.
But having said that, because in the virtual space, you also have virtual avatars. You also have virtualization of processes. Now, these avatars and these digital objects will and can and already have AI in them. So there's no telling how they would then become a little bit more smarter or more dangerous for you specifically. So I can put on a VR headset and play a game, and the enemies are all driven by AI. And if the AI has got a really impeccable machine learning, set of skills that's programmed into it, there's no way you win the game. I mean, it's a game for now, but when it becomes a simulation that will affect you, that might have a different consequence. So I think while every digital object can be programmed, it's a question of what the digital object is ultimately used for, and then raise the stakes. So for example, if I'm now putting on a headset and I'm talking to digital avatars because of training, and if they are programmed so well that they attempt and aim to put you down, you might feel miserable at the end of it. you know. So I think in that sense, we cannot ignore the fact that when you go digital, there is always a room for AI to be part of it. But then it boils down to the user. Are you going to put in an impeccable stack of AI? Do you already have something that will be so advanced that it will continue to be better and better until the user feels
I think
very daunted? And,
I think that the thing to that you just mentioned comes down again to the wisdom of using tech, right?
Mm.
And then the other thing is, of course, the ethics of AI to control that, and maybe even regulations by government over time. So it's a mixture of multiple things for us to put a lid on the dark side of technology, I guess. Yeah, I totally subscribe to that, and I think this is again a recurring theme that we have talked to about thought leaders who have surfaced this. I'm going to switch gear a little bit, Lionel.
Sure,
I'm going to ask you a question for all the business leaders out there. If a business leader wants to explore some of the 3 R's that we talk about to augment their business, to bring in new revenue streams or start new businesses, what would your advice to them to be? What is some of the low-hanging fruits that you look out for them to go onto this journey? Because I know that you have so much experience helping organizations.
Surprisingly, this is the one question I always get asked a lot, and surprisingly, is also the easiest answer to reply to. This wouldn't be the same if it was 4 years ago, when the tech is still nascent. But I think at this point in time, not just in Singapore, but the whole world has really embraced and used it in many different facets. So I think as a starting point, don't even need to call, email any company or anybody. Do your 1 hour, half hour, research, and just Google, YouTube, all the different possibilities. I like to always tell, like in classes I teach and people I talk to, if you put VR and one vertical, like VR retail or AR medical, the number of research results, right? You can even change the settings to recent, right? And if you got low patience and threshold, you can even put it to under 4 minutes, for example. The number of use case that people have posted, white paper release, blogs and case studies that have put up, already enables you to have a quick deep dive into these things, particularly in the industry or domain that you are operating or working in. That really paints the background or the backdrop of your first exploration. And then you use that to apply to your own background or business, right? For every search results they use, let's just say take one page of the Google search, easily there are 10 search results. That will easily give you a framework about how you apply it to yours. So that is the grounding point. Once you are able to translate that, let's say you run a retail company for furniture, right? And you've seen all the competitors, and you can even go to the store, even App Store or Android Store, to try out them for yourself. Once you are able to do that experience firsthand, then you start to bring in what is it that you want. And because you already seen and read and watched and experienced, right? Do you want your product to be, in AR or in VR? You already have an informed direction of where you want to go because of this easy 30 minutes and 1 hour, research of your own, thanks to the World Wide Web. And by that time, you will formulate what is it you want. And by that time, you contact anybody, it's so much easier to understand what is it that these companies can do for you.
Right.
So I think that starting point is really something more and more companies are starting to understand. Because there is a lot of these AR, VR that is just transversing, I just give you an example. I watch Jimmy Fallon YouTube videos because they're just funny,
Right.
And then lo and behold, because I watched them, they pop up, 3 years ago, he played Pictionary in VR.
Wow.
He played Pictionary. I didn't know about this.
Right.
And then people's comments were just very clear and easily guessable. I didn't know about VR. So these comments would then allow a lot of people to then get a first sign of filter about, these technologies. And they're slowly creeping out into various aspects of entertainment, media, news, and all that. Then they will start to understand and they start to learn. Then when they reach out to any vendors, companies, to talk to them about their specific needs to explore, they will already have a clear idea. So I think that's a really good start point, to even think about. And maybe for some companies, the realization after 1 hour research is that, I need to have everybody to have a headset. maybe that's not the way to go. So they even can check themselves there already.
Right. I think that's a very good advice, and it's free. All right, and it's not time consuming because
you
all
don't
the
have
information
to wait
is
for
out
anybody
there,
to get back to you.
and it's already quite a widely adopted technology. Look at the competitors, see what they're doing, and adopt some of these best practices. Right, that's so practical. So thanks. That's a gem of wisdom for our business leaders out there. I know. Now, I want to ask you a question, a personal question, if I may.
Sure, yes.
I see you as a successful leader running a very innovative technology company that's serving so many customers in Singapore.
There are more successful leaders.
We are all on this journey together.
Yeah.
And I understand that, it's not been an easy journey.
No.
Right? Can you share with us, as a fellow entrepreneur, what was this journey like? What was your what were some of the downsides of your journey, and how did you recover and become stronger?
Wow. That's a very tough question. So my background is I was in media, for close to 20 years. So all the lights and cameras and all that we see in front of us is something that I did. And I did that only because I wanted to do something different. So my formal qualification was in economics.
That's very different.
And after economics, a friend said, do something different for the next 3 months before you pursue economics. And lo and behold, the 3 months became 20 years. But in the 20 years of media, I think that was the exciting part, because I then lived by the mandate to make people laugh, cry, smile because of the films, because of the stories, because of the power of media. But I think in the international landscape, and after decades in that line, you realize that you're competing internationally, right? With all the different stories and films and plays and content and IPs from all over the world. And being a very open economy like Singapore, to foster and adopt, a local mindset to appreciate local content is a challenge that I've tried so hard to win and haven't won. And I guess for many, still a challenge. Then it became not fun anymore, because it wasn't a question about how to win people with what you produce. It's about how to win people by just first asking them to give you a chance. First asking them to see your work, before you even focus on your work. And it became just tiring, because you then became preoccupied with getting people's attention rather than focusing on your craft.
Right.
That doesn't mean that in the tech world it's any easier. Even as I'm a practitioner and advocate for like XR, a whole amount of time is to just understanding the business and running of a business. And for many times in the last 4 or 5 years, that wasn't fun. Managing how tenders are being conducted, the 3-code system, what is the pricing point, all these things, that shadows the tech wasn't fun. So there's all these things that I guess nobody will already tell you unless you're living it, right? And then you ask yourself whether you want to continue to be bogged down by these things.
Right.
I didn't for media, and I thought when I switch over the tech, it will be easier. And I guess it would be if I was employed and not having to navigate all these things. But when I came back from my postgrad with XR, nobody knew what it was. So I had to start the company because I had clients to service. And the funny story is I had 2 invoices to send to clients when I didn't have a company yet. So I had to incorporate just to invoice them, and that's how sort of we started. But then nobody would have guessed that actually at that point in time, I was just learning about navigating businesses, this being my first business, than to actually be preoccupied with the tech. So I think that was really not just a low point, but low points in the journey. Because as many times, I would have been very proud to show people the tech. But then I would face with, a tender spec document that specifies these things we have to qualify. And I have to partner with people because our paid out capital to even qualify for the job is not in the millions, for example. So there's all these business landscapes, to navigate. But I think what is most frustrating is really when we come in contact with self-professed innovators that wears innovation on their sleeve, that post about it, that talk about it, that share about it, but that's all they do. They don't do anything about it. When you tell them proof of concept can be done for X dollars, they hold back. Then you realize that actually the innovation landscape is overused. There are people that just want to be overtly seen as innovative, but that's it. But then there are people that are innovative by spending, blood, sweat and tears and money to make it happen. And then comes the great learning and the divide again, because it is not a coherent term to innovate. You really have to suss out those that are willing to do something with you about it, and compared to those that just talk about it. And so that's the interesting story behind where it led to in our current acquisition, because the parent company that we were talking to were really invested, and they were putting in resources that were beyond us to make things happen. And I saw that was miraculous, because other partners that came along the way was just trying to innovate by asking us to do things for them. This one was, we are in it together. And I thought that was beautiful.
So, I understand where you're coming from. You are a tech innovator, but suddenly you are bogged down with business and tenders and everything. Was there a time that you wanted to give up, or you feel really low?
I think every entrepreneur can attest and probably answer this question. Like for me, I only take my salaries at the end of the financial year, because after I declare how much is it, then I'll take back director's fees. And so I did this to make sure that, I'm able to drive the company forward, pay everybody else first. And then if the company does well, then I'll take. If the company doesn't do well, then I don't take. And I guess for everybody's entrepreneurship journey, the first year is always the most tough,
the
right?
first few years.
The first few years. So you will never, be happy to say that, wow, you compare to previously. And I came off a full-time position to go into postgrad without earning anything, to come back to a startup. So there was zero income for many years, right?
Wow.
So I think that was really a tough time to manage. And I guess the question is really, how would you be able to push on for that sense? So the short answer is really just savings beyond savings beyond savings.
And perseverance, I guess. Perseverance plays a big part.
But I think perseverance is not something I would proudly own if it's not for the community, not for the support, not for partners. I always say we were very lucky to be incubated by IMDA. We were given a space to work with where I don't have to worry about rent. There were a lot of people that joined the course. They came in. I can name you these people. Benson, Allison, who joined me from day one because they wanted to learn about the tech. They didn't even ask for salaries to start the journey. I think these people I salute and I really give thanks to, because they really came into the picture, just getting the startup off the ground, and being excited about the tech and really moving us forward to where we are today.
So, I recently read this book by Simon Sinek, said that leaders eat last. So, I'm hearing it from you now. I think that is a very wise piece of advice.
I still haven't eaten yet.
You still haven't eaten yet. So am I, actually. So, if there's one last question I have for you, what would be three tips that can give our entrepreneurs who are starting on this journey, or this tech journey? What do you think are the three things that they need to equip themselves with to make sure their journey is a little bit smoother? So that they probably can have an earlier lunch than you and me.
Okay. Wow. Actually, very coincidentally, I didn't segmentize them into three. I was just thinking to myself, with the acquisition, for example, how would things have been different? How would I look back and see that it's been different? I think first and foremost is based on current economic situation with the pandemic and everything. It's quite foolhardy to launch an entrepreneurship journey if you don't have a backup plan. Many people have to do that now because of no choice situation. I know a lot of fresh graduates who can't find a job and then they have to embark on their entrepreneurship journey. So if it's beyond our control, then it's beyond our control. But having said that, if you are with a job and it's within your control, but you're itching to start something, consider the options first, right? Either ask for part-time, so that you can manage the hours and then dip your toes into the entrepreneurship journey so you have a fallback plan. I think that safety net is probably a good way to get started, because it will keep your finance, your house in order, while you then, consider the fact that you are exploring this space.
Right.
But this is where the danger lies, because it's very easy to be consumed by paid work, especially when entrepreneurship journey mostly consists of no paid work unless the rewards are immediate. So you have to be super disciplined. If it's 20 hours a week and 20 hours for your entrepreneurship to start up, whatever it is, then you have to make sure that you abide to that. If not, come up with a plan, right? In 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, what is it that you're hoping to achieve? I always remember this thing, which I am guilty of not doing fervently, is that if you live life without a goal, then you live life without a goal. It's like traveling without a destination.
Right.
If you have a destination like Google Maps, then you make sure you do everything to hit the destination, especially when you're not in a Grab. So if you have to change bus, train, and then you walk, then you have to deliberately take those actions. But if you just live life and say, I want to do this startup, full stop, without identifying that first 3 months I need to win the first customer, next 3 months I need to win seed money acquisition then you wouldn't be devising plans to make that happen. You'll be rolling along. Our plan in our startup journey has always been, by the 3rd year, we need to build our own platforms. We started on a service model because I don't have a lot of money to invest, and I don't even know the landscape of seed funding and how to get investors and all that. So we started on a service model, which my friends call it the hair salon model. So you cut hair as a service for people and they pay you, which is very easy to understand. That worked well, but not well in the sense of your tenders and all that, right? But it worked well to a certain point. Is you must put a stop to this, otherwise you can keep going. And you will always keep going with the pitfalls of service model. But you also need to identify when you need to do your own platform, your own IP. What is the point that you need to stop and say, I need to do that? So in our 3rd year, I made sure that I had to do that. So not all targets are 3, 6, 9 months. It could be in years. And then it's a question of your patience, perseverance, whether, the number of years something that you can stomach. We had to build our platforms because in every acquisition story and every success story, it always boils down to what is the IP of the startup that has undertaken, right? Sure, there are a lot of SaaS model startups that have been acquired, but I think below and beneath the SaaS model, there's some overriding IP that they have. So I think IP is the way to go, and that's why, in our own plans, we also wanted to build our own IPs. So I think this 2 things, which is have a plan about when you start, whether it is part-time or whether you're forced by circumstances, to start something. And step 2 is map out the journey about your milestones to make sure that you know where you want to go, and make sure that you stick to it, right? Be it in months or is it in year. And I think the 3rd thing is probably what you cannot possibly you can plan, but you cannot possibly control, is really who comes your way, right? The people that you meet, the partners that you embark. The question of whether they are good for you, whether they'll bring you somewhere, and what the possibilities are. That's a skill and a learning which I think I'm experiencing myself. For every partner that's successful, there's other partners that don't work out. And partners that don't work out, are you bitter about it? Do you learn anything from it? Or are you going to just relegate into self-wallow and self-pity and what happens? For every client that you win, every client you don't win, every client that you didn't win but you spend a month of work preparing for it, what's going to happen? So I see a lot of people defeated because they didn't win something and they remain defeated. But the question is really, can you win because you are defeated? Can you take that as a portfolio that you do as a demo? I mean, in the past, we lost a lot of stuff. But every time we lost something, we took the demos, the pitch deck, and we outrightly say, wow, we have done this demo, this POC, we would love to introduce it to you. So how do you turn that around into a silver lining? I think I can't profess to say that I've mastered the 3rd, advice or this 3rd point. But I think every day I'm trying to do that. And that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah, that's courage. How to turn your failure into success,
constantly moving.
And innovating and learning on this journey. And that's what all successful entrepreneurs are all about, right?
Yeah. I mean, I mentored a group of students recently. I once told them something and then all of them were delighted in that. I was saying to them, unless you are sitting down doing nothing, everything they are doing adds to your portfolio, even though it's a failure. Because you have something that you have done that can be added to a feather in your cap. Never mind if nobody sees the feather, but it adds up. So by the end of 12 months, you have 12 feathers. It will become something, even though one feather is easy to ignore. So as long as you are doing something, adding to a portfolio, it will add up. It's only when you are not doing anything, that's where you should worry.
Right. And this is very inspiring, I think, and this is very pragmatic advice for our audience out there. Like, I think we have learned so much from today's conversation with you, whether it's from a technology perspective, how to correlate, how coexist with this technology, and what is your personal journey, and how, what sort of advice for entrepreneurs out there who are thinking about taking up tech as a business itself.
Yep.
And it's wonderful, and I like to personally thank you for joining us on behalf of our audience and on this Tony Tan show, and really appreciate your time and your advice and all the content that you have shared with us. And we look forward to catch up with you soon, perhaps when we are doing our 4-way podcast, where we bring multiple subject matters together to explore even bigger topics in the next couple of months.
Thanks so much for having me, and it's totally been my pleasure.
Love to have you back. I will see you soon, Lionel.
Thank you. Thank you so
much for your time today.
Thank you.
Take care.